Hey, everybody, it's Bob. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Today, cybersecurity and infrastructure. Come on. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back to the podcast. Katie, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing good. What's on your mind?
Today is Cyber Day. We're talking about cyber and the infrastructure of the United States, kind of a big topic.
Bob, no objections to talking about cyber, but haven't we been talking about cybersecurity in this country for years?
I got to be honest. I think people have been talking about cybersecurity for years. I don't think we're talking about it in the right way. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about, quite frankly.
We've been both in different parts of our career, been looking at cybersecurity for the past several years. I think the threat continues to just grow bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think the threat's bigger and bigger, but I mean, I think the point of the matter is I don't think we're having an honest conversation about actually what the hell's going on with cyber and who's doing it, and why are they doing it, and who's not doing it, and who's actually going to come help you if anything goes wrong, or who's not actually going to come. For running a company for years before we started doing this podcast, I never set the company up or set my infrastructure up in any way other than if something went wrong, I knew that I could help myself out of a situation. And I think one of the things I want to kind of talk about today, especially for people that are in the private sector or even in the public sector, if they're running an organization, a company, an IT, it doesn't matter. I think we need to have an honest conversation about cyber, about how is anybody going to come, or if they're going to come, to help you at all. And I think there's a big misconception about this, quite frankly. I mean, that's one of my biggest things about it.
I think for the majority of companies out there, I don't think anybody's coming.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody's coming, but besides that, I mean, I just don't think people understand how many people are actually working cyber in the government, how many bodies they have. And by the way, this bugs me because anything I Google on this, it's very hard to tell. Everybody wants to talk about budgets, and that to me is a big misnomer. You could be spending $1 billion on something and doing it all wrong. That doesn't tell how many people you actually have in seats actually doing this. But I mean, if you ask anybody in the United States, who's the one point of contact for cyber, I think you get 100 different answers. And I know from being in the private sector for years, doing nothing but cyber incidents and proactive work and all kinds of technical work, people still don't have a good idea of who they're going to call, why they're going to call. Should I really call them? Are they going to just come crawling up my company's infrastructure and find stuff that perhaps, especially a bank with a bunch of oversight from a bunch of regulators, and I don't think people have any idea about that. I mean, like, who do you think's working cyber in the government?
Well, but it's a good question. I mean, you work the FBI side of it. Well, I was on the DHS side of it. We have CISA. We have Secret Service. There's multiple agencies within one institution that touch and help from a cybersecurity perspective. So when the private sector looks, like from your perspective, like who in the federal government alone has the lead for cybersecurity?
Yeah, and I think even there, when you talk about terrorism, or you talk about espionage, or you talk about any of these heavy hitter things, it's all going to fall to the FBI regardless. But the bigger thing is, I bet you there's 20 other organizations besides that. That doesn't even count the NSA, CIA, offshoots from DIA, DOD. I can go on and on and on and on. And my point is, as a government, I think we've got a bunch of people working their ass off, trying to do the best thing they can possibly do for this country when it comes to nation state attacks, criminal organizations, trafficking organizations, child exploitation. All this is out there and there's money going to all of it. But from my experience, and this is what bugs me about all this as a private sector guy for the last 10 or 11 years, I don't think anybody sees the whole picture. I think they're trying. Like I said, I think we got a bunch of people trying, but I blame a lot of this on the Congress and the Senate for oversight. I don't think they get allocated the right money. I have no idea how many people are working in the whole of government against cyber. And I don't think the government sees the right picture of what's actually going on in cyber. And I think that's a problem. And I think as somebody that's running a company, I don't care, big, small, medium, it doesn't matter. If you're worried about a cyber attack or a ransomware incident or a malware attack or some type of vulnerability in your system, I don't think you think about calling the local or state or federal authorities in your district. I think you're thinking, who do I call that has a really big picture view that can get me out of this? I don't know if it's even easier than it was 10 years ago.
D- Do you? I don't even know if it's big enough. I mean, when it comes to resources, you're talking about resources. Are they fully staffed? Do we know what fully staffed looks like from a numbers perspective? How many people are working this
Yeah,
issue?
I don't think any of that's out there. And honestly, I don't think they are. I mean, go back 10, 15 years ago when I was running all this stuff. I mean, we might have had a couple thousand people in the FBI, a couple thousand, maybe, dedicated to cyber, maybe. Most of them were probably in headquarters. And even we stood up the NCIJTF out in Chantilly, you had 30 agencies plus out there, but it wasn't a lot of people. And, when you take away the people that from the United States intelligence organizations that are basically OCONUS outside the country, like NSA, CIA, and all that,
Right.
because of legal responsibilities, they can't do this stuff, even DOD, and other little entities. I mean, I have no idea how many people. I've tried to find it. I can't find it. I've looked all over the place online. Just tell me how many people. So let's say it's 10,000 people. Let's say it's 20,000,
Which
30.
is still up against nation states that are
Yeah.
dedicating unlimited resources
Right.
to
And
this.
again, you got 30, 40. Let's say it's 50,000. By the way, I'll bet my pension it's nowhere near that.
Yeah. Well, how many people are in the FBI alone?
Well, I think now they got like 37,000, or 30. Yeah. But I will tell you that none of that, very small percentage of that is going to be working cyber. But I'm saying let's take the whole of government. Again, we can get to, and again, this is more to enlighten CEOs and people of boards that are actually running this or looking at this. This is not a negative on our government. Like I said, you got a bunch of men and women killing themselves every day trying to do this. But the reality is, people come and go, heads of these organizations come and go, right? And no one keeps their eye on the ball. This has been a big thing for years. Like when we started off, you said, oh my God, we're talking about cyber again. I think the whole country has malaise on cyber because that's all we've been hearing for the last 10 or 15 years. But let's talk about the reality, right? I still don't think people have a good idea of who to call. CISA was stood up and there's all kinds of great information that they've put out, more of a coordination education thing, I think, more than anything.
Right. Advisories, bulletins, vulnerabilities.
Bulletins. But, there's so many different places companies get advised. They go to the FBI ISACs. They go all over the place, right? So how does the government, forget the organizations, how does the government actually understand the threat against the United States? I think I've talked to you about this before. When I first came out of the government 2015 and I went to the first company, I ran this giant global incident response cyber practice. We did thousands of breaches in 3 years, thousands of breaches. I talked to the FBI one time, and when I talked to them, they couldn't help me. And by the way, I love the FBI and I love the USIC. But what a light bulb came off of my head. I've done thousands of breaches.
That they don't know about.
Have no clue that I did them. And by the way, not my responsibility, right? I'm working for a company that when I say, hey, let's bring in this guy, that guy, this agency, if the boss says, you're not bringing those people in, guess what? I'm not bringing those people in. There's thousands of cyber companies that are doing this with thousands of breaches every year. Now, granted, some of the big MSSP providers that provide technology on your infrastructure to stop, or prevent, or actually, I'm sure they're working with the government and providing intelligence. But my point is, it doesn't matter. I ran the biggest intelligence division in the FBI for years. I know intelligence. And the reality is, if you've got a gap, a big gap, you're missing it. And so I think as a CEO or a board, you need to be asking yourself, hey, who do I talk to? And right now, depending what it is, if they ask me, I'd give them a different answer. But then if I talk to them, are they really going to have the manpower or bandwidth to come and help me? I mean, I just saw in the paper the other day, this administration wants to cut, 1,000, 2,000 jobs out of CISA.
Right, which is supposed to be the liaison with the critical infrastructure.
Right, supposed to be the point person, right? And by the way, I had a call yesterday with a CEO in Dallas, Texas. Last night, he had a question about something and he just called me. And I knew we were going to talk about this today. So I said, hey, let me ask you a question. Your company catastrophically shuts down today. Who do you call? He goes, I'm calling you, meaning Bob.
Yeah.
Bob,
Private sector Bob.
Right? I don't even do this anymore. But he's calling me because he trusts me. And it hit me when we started. I just think we need to educate the private sector. You've got a bunch of people and a bunch of organizations that have a lot of technology, a lot of smart people, but I'm not so sure they're going to be there for you, because depending on the size of your breach, depending on what's going on in their organization, depending on the manpower, and I keep going back to this, like, why can't I find that anywhere on the internet? That bugs me as a U.S. person, right?
Yeah.
Like, I should be able to know how my government's trying to protect me. And the reality is I can find all about their budgets, And by the way, I used to go in expert witness cases and tear companies apart about this in cyber. Oh, I've spent $1 billion on cyber. Yeah,
Right.
but you spent it on a bunch of crap that doesn't work, and that doesn't make you okay.
Yeah, you're not showing how effective you are at managing this risk. Let me ask you one question, because I think you make an interesting point. How do we have a better understanding, a bigger picture, a more holistic picture of what the threat is and how it's targeting our country or impacting whether it's the government or our critical infrastructure or the private sector at large? And so, that President Trump signed an executive order, and I want to get this right, so I'm going to read it directly. Aimed at giving states power, quote, to make smart infrastructure choices that address risks from cyber attacks and other physical disasters. The order states it's the policy of the U.S. government that state and local governments and individuals play a more active and significant role in national resilience and preparedness. So as the federal government now tries to push this down, they're cutting jobs out of CISA and others from a budget perspective and push more responsibility to the states to protect this critical infrastructure. Does that help us have a better picture of what's going on, or do we lose more insight?
Yeah, I got a mixed answer on that. I know from experience, when you're running global threats, like global, all over the world, forget about the United States. You might be sitting in the United States, but you're looking at the threat from X all over the world. That's why after 9/11 on the terrorism side, we started these fusion centers, right? You needed every bit of data about every aspect of what's going in one place. Why? So you had a sight picture on the entire threat, and you knew what was going on with it. And then you could push intelligence out to everybody else from that. The thing gets complicated nowadays with cyber is because I don't think, and I don't know the answer, but I think the government should be coming out, hey, listen, we're trying as hard as we can. We're pedaling this car as fast as we can pedal it. But the responsibility is yours. If we can come help you, we will. We want to coordinate with you, we will. But you know what? You need to be prepared to take care of it. No one's saying that. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Right. And that's the part that bugs me, because again, it's not the men and women killing themselves doing this. They're killing themselves to do it. I blame the Senate and Congress and national coordination on this. It sits above all these organizations to say, wait a minute, are we really doing the job that we think we are? Hey, I bet you they're doing a heck of a job offensively and defensively on certain aspects. But I know from doing it for real, there's tens of thousands of companies out here suffering every year that there's nobody talking to them, and they're not talking to the government. So a realistic picture is, I think that you need to be prepared for that. Get back to your question about state versus federal. I think there is a piece of this that state, local municipals can handle. But you got to remember, like, I was a state cop for years. I have interacted all over the country with state, local, municipal. They don't have the funding in most cases. They don't have the training in most cases. And I will tell you, people don't understand how much is going on with a city police officer, a county police officer, a sheriff. These people are handling assaults, rapes, robberies, homicides, car accidents all day long. People think that happens like once every now. No, it doesn't. I mean, I remember one specific day in Delaware when I was a trooper. Swear to God, this is in the 80s. They have the stock car races in Dover Downs, and we always hated it because you'd have the entire Dover police force surround, because it always became, you had car accidents, fights, DUIs, blah, 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 blah. And you'd have maybe 3-4 troopers in the whole county. And I remember, I mean, you probably get fired for this nowadays, but I would go to a car accident, get called to it because they're all letting out. The driver's DUI, the other guy's DUI. I put them both in handcuffs, put them back in my car. And by the way, I got to go to another traffic accident because there's nobody else. So I take 2 guys that I've arrested. The tow trucks are cleaning that up. And I'm going to a third car accident where that guy's DUI. And so now I got him in the right front seat of my car because this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
But my point is, I got 3 dudes handcuffed in the car. I'm one guy. 3 separate accidents. I haven't even started the paperwork on. I have no idea where the cars are going. My point to you is that still goes on. Like, I read just the other day, and it drives me insane. I'd like to talk about this at some other time, but the city of Chicago had 21 shootings on Saturday. a weekend ago. On Saturday, they had 20, just the city of Chicago. And so my point is, when you actually say, I want to push this out to the states and locals, I don't think the average American, unless you've been in law enforcement, been in criminal justice, been in the court system, understands this is not like you're going to go out and you're going to do one thing like you see on TV. Like the guy on the road, does this whole big investigation and he goes and interviews people all over the country. That does not happen. From the minute you go 10-8, that's what we used to say. I mean, you're ready for duty. You took off like a bat out of hell and you never slowed down until 3 hours after your shift. I don't think that's gotten any better. And so there's pieces of this I think they can push out. But the thing that really worries me about it from a national security side of this, because I'm telling you, and you hear a lot of people talking about it, the biggest assault that's going to come to this country is not going to be drones like it's going on in Ukraine. It's going to be a cyber attack.
Mm-hmm.
And when that attack happens and we're not ready for it, it's going to devastate this country. And so that's what worries me. I don't think the government sees what's going on right now, not because they're not trying, but I just think out of necessity and people, they can't. And so I don't even know how much the people in the government even understand this. I didn't understand it until I came out in the private sector and I ran it. And that's what startles me. And I just, that's the piece of this I don't see getting better. Somebody needs to grab a hold of this, and they need to localize it and center it through a picture that people can see the totality of what's actually going on. And I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that we can be doing better.
Yeah, I mean, doing better is one thing. But I think, like I said, if I'm a CEO now or a chairman, and I sit on a lot of boards, publicly traded companies, advisory boards, big tech, pharma, that's what everybody wants. Like if somebody's going to try to steal like the next great trade secret intellectual property besides AI and quantum, which I know we'll talk about or whatever, I mean, that's the realistic target for all these countries, and I don't see it, I don't see it. And I think people need to be aware if you're sitting on a board or if you're sitting inside a company as a leader and you don't take the time to say, hey, look, I know we can call the FBI, I know we can call Secret Service, DHS, whoever, CISA, but maybe they can come, maybe they can't, and don't take that 5 minutes to prepare for it, I think you're negligent. And I think that is not what I hear coming from the government.
But they need to be asking those questions early and often because this threat is facing them now.
Yeah, I mean, early on, but I would say if somebody called me in and said, Bob, tell me what we're supposed to do, I would say you need to set up an entire plan on how you're going to respond to an incident.
Right.
You need to have an outside law firm. You need to have an outside cyber. I don't care if you have a CISO. I don't care if you have a CIO. I don't care. They're going to be inundated trying to work with that firm to remediate the breach. They're going to be busy, and your general counsel is going to be busy. You need to take this action because if people do come to help you, do come to give you intelligence on how to get out of this, power to them, like high five, everybody's happy. But if you're sitting there waiting for it and they're not, look, the last time I did a major breach with a company not that long ago before I basically retired out of being a CEO and a chairman of a company, the company called me because the breach response firm that they called said, I'll be there in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. And by the way, this is a huge company inside
that was
the United
my next
States.
Question. How big is this company?
Big company, probably one of the top 5 in the country. They said, we'll be there in 3 weeks. And the reason they'll be there in 3 weeks is because they're handling so many other breaches. And the reality with all this is it never shows up in the news. You only hear about the big ones like MGM or whatever. But that's because you only hear about them because they've lost fighting the battle to keep it quiet and they have to report it because of a breach requirement in that state. Now you hear about it. Well, the time you hear about it, it's months, weeks later. And people think, that just happened to that giant company. They don't understand that there's thousands of these things going on every day. And I just wish our government would do better about informing the private sector. But I really think the Congress and Senate, that's who allocates money to all these federal agencies. That's who can allocate FSL or staffing level of bodies. Because I honestly don't think outside of some of the big agencies, there's a lot of people working this threat. And the reality is it's coming. with the advent of AI and quantum computing, these threats are going to go through the roof. They're going to be worse than I've ever seen in my life. And I just don't think we're setting up the right, policies and procedures. And my big thing about talking about this today is I'm not bashing anybody. Again, I think we've got tons of people killing themselves, but somebody with authority needs to come in over top of all this and say, wait a minute, we've got entities all over the place. Let's coordinate the budget. Let's coordinate the technology. Let's coordinate the staffing. And how do we fight this nationally? And if you're a CEO or a chairman or anybody sitting on a board, you should be asking these questions. I think you're absolutely liable if you're not, because if people dig into it, there's no guarantee anybody's coming to help you. You know what I mean?
Agree.
Anyway, I think this is a good conversation. So thanks for tuning back in. Thanks for coming back to Let's Talk, the podcast. Remember, peace, love each other. We need it.